The spreadsheet glowed on my monitor at 11:47 p.m., numbers dancing in neat columns like soldiers in formation. I'd been staring at client data for 3 hours straight, but my mind kept wandering to the sound of Naomi's laughter drifting from the kitchen. She was on the phone again, that particular laugh she reserved for people she wanted to impress. "Oh, Dean, you're terrible," she giggled, and I felt my jaw clench involuntarily. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Felix Harper, and I'm a forensic accountant. I make my living finding discrepancies, uncovering lies hidden in financial records, and exposing fraud. The irony wasn't lost on me that I might need those same skills in my own home. Naomi Bell had been my girlfriend for 2 years, living together in our shared brownstone apartment in Cambridge for the last 8 months. The exposed brick walls and hardwood floors had seemed romantic when we signed the lease. Now they felt like a prison where every whispered conversation echoed. "Felix, honey, I'm heading to bed," Naomi called from the doorway, her phone finally silent. She looked radiant even at midnight, her auburn hair catching the lamplight, green eyes sparkling with residual amusement from her conversation. "Who was that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Just Dean from work. He was telling me about this hilarious thing that happened in his meeting today." She moved behind my chair, placing her hands on my shoulders. "You should meet him sometime. I think you'd like him." The thing about being a forensic accountant is that you develop an instinct for when numbers don't add up. And lately, nothing about Naomi's work husband, Dean Shaw, was adding up correctly. "Maybe," I said, saving my work. "What kind of meetings does a sales manager have at 11:30 at night?" Naomi's hands stiffened slightly on my shoulders. "It wasn't a work call, silly. We're friends. Good friends can talk any time, right?" I turned in my chair to face her. "Of course they can." She kissed my forehead, but something felt different, distant. "Don't stay up too much longer, okay? You've been working crazy hours lately." After she disappeared into our bedroom, I sat in the blue glow of my computer screen, listening to the old building settle around us. 20 minutes later, I heard the soft chime of her phone receiving a text message, followed by muffled laughter. That's when I knew. The next morning, Naomi was unusually cheerful, humming while she made coffee in our narrow kitchen. She wore her favorite black dress, the one that hugged her curves perfectly, and her makeup was more carefully applied than usual. "Big day at work?" I asked, accepting the mug she handed me. "Just the usual corporate event planning chaos. Though Dean's taking me to lunch at that new place on Newberry Street. You know, the one with the amazing salmon? Generous of him. He's just being nice. The company's been really stressful lately, and he knows I've been overwhelmed." She checked her reflection in the toaster's chrome surface, adjusting her lipstick. "Sometimes it's nice to have someone who understands the pressure." I nodded, sipping my coffee. It tasted bitter, but maybe that was just my mood. After Naomi left for her job at Pinnacle Corporate Solutions, I sat alone in our apartment, surrounded by the evidence of our shared life. Her event planning trophies lined the mantelpiece, gleaming reminders of her success. My own achievements were more modest, framed certifications on the wall of my home office, a small but growing client base for my forensic accounting firm. At work that day, I found it hard to concentrate. My office was typical startup chic. Open floor plan, exposed pipes, a coffee machine that worked half the time. My business partner and best friend Jamie Martinez noticed my distraction immediately. "You look like someone stole your calculator," Jamie said, perching on the edge of my desk. At 29, she was brilliant with numbers and had an uncanny ability to read people's moods. "Just tired," I said, but Jamie wasn't buying it. "This is about Naomi, isn't it?" I looked up at her. Jamie had never been Naomi's biggest fan, though she'd never said so directly. What makes you think that? Because you get this particular expression when something's bothering you about your relationship. It's different from your client is hiding assets face or your Excel crashed face. Despite everything, I smiled. You know me too well. So what's going on? I hesitated, then told her about the late-night phone calls, the mysterious lunch dates, the way Naomi's face lit up whenever she mentioned Dean Shaw. Jamie listened without interruption, her expression growing more serious. Felix, you know I'm not one to jump to conclusions, but if this was a financial audit, you'd already be digging deeper. You'd be looking for patterns, documentation, evidence. She was right, and we both knew it. In my professional life, I never ignored red flags. I followed paper trails, cross-referenced data, and trusted my instincts. So why was I making excuses for Naomi? That evening, Naomi came home glowing from her lunch with Dean. She chattered about the restaurant, the food, how funny he was, how he really got her sense of humor. I listened, making appropriate responses, while a cold certainty settled in my chest. He's really excited about this new project we're working on together, she said, settling onto our couch with a glass of wine. We might have to put in some late nights over the next few weeks. Together? Well, yes, it's a collaborative effort. Team building, you know. I knew exactly what kind of team building she meant. That night, after Naomi fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Our bedroom felt different now, charged with unspoken tensions and half-truths. Through the thin walls I could hear our neighbor's television, the distant hum of traffic on Mass Ave, the ordinary sounds of a city that didn't care about my personal crisis. But I cared, and unlike the financial fraud I investigated for clients, this betrayal was personal. This time, I wasn't just going to document the evidence and hand it over to someone else to handle. This time, I was going to do something about it. The next few days passed in a strange haze of normalcy. Naomi went to work, came home with stories about her day, cooked dinner, watched Netflix with me on the couch. To an outside observer, we probably looked like a perfectly happy couple. But I was watching now. Really watching. I noticed how she angled her phone away from me when texting. I saw the way she smiled at certain messages, a private, intimate expression I hadn't seen directed at me in weeks. I observed her increased attention to her appearance, the new perfume she'd started wearing, the way she suddenly needed to work late 3 nights in a row. On Thursday evening, I decided to test my theory. I was thinking of surprising you at work tomorrow, I said casually while we ate takeout Chinese food. Maybe bringing lunch for you and your team? Naomi nearly choked on her lo mein. Oh, that's sweet, but tomorrow's going to be absolutely crazy. We're in back-to-back meetings all day, and you know how corporate environments can be. Very formal, very stuffy. You'd be bored out of your mind. I don't mind boring. I'd like to meet this dean you're always talking about. Another time would be better, she said quickly, when things aren't so hectic. There it was. The deflection, the excuse, the gentle but firm rejection of my presence in her work world. In forensic accounting, we call this compartmentalization, keeping different aspects of a fraud separate to avoid detection. That weekend, while Naomi was at her yoga class, I did what any good investigator would do. I gathered evidence. Her laptop was password protected, but Naomi had never been particularly creative with security. Her password was her birthday followed by the year we met. It took me 3 tries. What I found in her email and message history made my stomach turn. Months of flirtatious exchanges with Dean Shaw, inside jokes, compliments about her appearance, increasingly intimate conversations, photos of the two of them at various work events, standing closer together than necessary, his hand on her waist, her head tilted toward his shoulder. But it was the recent messages that really drove the knife in. Dean. Can't stop thinking about yesterday, you're incredible. Naomi. We have to be more careful. Felix is getting suspicious. Dean. Maybe it's time to tell him. I hate sneaking around. Naomi. Not yet. I need to figure out the right way to handle this. I sat back in my desk chair, staring at the screen. There it was, laid out in digital black and white. My girlfriend was having an affair, and they were discussing how to manage me like I was some kind of inconvenient obstacle. The rational part of my brain knew I should confront her immediately, demand an explanation, end the relationship cleanly. But the forensic accountant in me wanted more. I wanted the complete picture. I wanted to understand the full scope of their deception, and I wanted them to pay for it. I spent the rest of the weekend taking screenshots, documenting timestamps, building a comprehensive file of their affair. By Sunday night, I had enough evidence to destroy both of their reputations and careers. But I didn't want to just expose them. I wanted to make them suffer the way they'd made me suffer. Monday morning, I started putting my plan into action. Jamie, I said, walking into our office with unusual energy, I need your help with something. She looked up from her computer, immediately alert. What kind of help? The kind that requires your particular talent for social media research and your complete discretion. Jamie's eyes lit up with interest. This is about Naomi and the work husband, isn't it? I nodded, pulling up a chair beside her desk. I found proof. Lots of proof. But I don't just want to confront them. I want to make sure they face real consequences for what they've done. Felix, I have to ask, are you sure about this? Once you start down this road, there's no going back. I thought about Naomi's face when she lied to me about working late, about Dean's smug smile in the photos, about the months of deception and manipulation. I'm sure. Okay then. Jamie cracked her knuckles. Tell me what you need. We spent the morning researching Dean Shaw's online presence, his company's social media policies, and the professional network that connected him to Naomi. Jamie was brilliant at finding digital footprints, and within 2 hours, we had a complete profile of his life, career, and relationships. He's got a pretty big ego, Jamie observed, scrolling through his LinkedIn posts. Lots of humble bragging about his sales numbers, photos from company events where he's always front and center. And look at this, he's in a long-term relationship with someone named Rebecca Crawford. He's cheating on his girlfriend too? Looks like it. They've been together for 3 years, and she posts about him constantly. She seems really sweet, actually. Works as a pediatric nurse, volunteers at animal shelters, the whole package. Now, I wasn't just angry. I was furious. Dean wasn't just destroying my relationship. He was destroying an innocent woman who clearly loved him. This wasn't just about sex or attraction. This was about two selfish people who thought they could take whatever they wanted without consequences. Change of plans, I said. We're not just exposing them. We're going to systematically dismantle their lives. Jamie looked at me with a mixture of concern and admiration. Felix, you're starting to scare me a little. And I kind of love it. That afternoon, I sent my first message. Nothing dramatic or obvious, just a simple anonymous email to Pinnacle Corporate Solutions HR department, with screenshots of some of the more inappropriate messages between Naomi and Dean, along with a note expressing concern about potential workplace harassment. Then I waited. Naomi came home that evening in a strange mood, agitated, distracted, constantly checking her phone. She barely touched her dinner and kept glancing at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Everything okay at work? I asked innocently. Fine, she said quickly. Just some HR nonsense. You know how corporate bureaucracy can be. I nodded sympathetically. Anything I can help with? No, it's nothing serious. Just some stupid complaint about workplace conduct. Probably some jealous coworker stirring up trouble. I felt a dark satisfaction at her obvious discomfort. This was just the beginning. Over the next few days, I watched Naomi grow increasingly stressed. She had hushed phone conversations with Dean, worried discussions about keeping their story straight, and sleepless nights spent staring at the ceiling. Meanwhile, I continued my campaign. anonymous tips to their mutual friends about the affair, carefully planted rumors in their professional network, strategic social media posts that raised questions about their relationship without making direct accusations. I was patient, methodical, and ruthless. Everything I'd learned about investigating fraud, I applied to destroying their comfortable little world of deception. And it was working. By the end of the week, cracks were starting to show. Naomi's usual confidence had evaporated, replaced by nervous energy and constant phone checking. She'd started working from home more often, claiming she needed to focus on a big project, but I suspected she was trying to avoid the office gossip mill. Thursday evening, she came home looking genuinely shaken. "Felix, we need to talk," she said, setting down her purse with trembling hands. My heart rate spiked, but I kept my expression neutral. "What's wrong?" "Someone at work has been spreading rumors about me and Dean. Malicious lies about our relationship being inappropriate." She sat down heavily on our couch, running her hands through her hair. "HR is taking it seriously. They've opened an investigation." "That's terrible," I said, sitting beside her. "Who would do something like that?" "I don't know, but they've been very thorough. Screenshots, timestamps, even photos from company events. Someone's been watching us, documenting everything." She looked at me with desperate eyes. "You believe me, don't you? That it's all innocent?" I took her hands in mine, looking directly into her eyes. "Of course I believe you. You'd never lie to me about something like this." The guilt that flashed across her face was almost worth months of betrayal. Almost. "The investigation should clear everything up," I continued. "If you and Dean are just friends, you have nothing to worry about." "Right," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Nothing to worry about." That night, I lay awake, listening to her toss and turn beside me. Around 2 a.m., she slipped out of bed and went to the living room. I heard her whispering urgently into her phone, though I couldn't make out the words. The next morning, she announced she was taking a sick day. "I just need some time to think," she said, still in her pajamas at 10 a.m. "This whole situation at work has me really stressed." I kissed her forehead before leaving for the office. "It'll blow over. These things always do." But I knew it wouldn't blow over, because I wasn't done yet. At work, Jamie was waiting with updates from her own investigation. "Rebecca Crawford posted something interesting on Facebook yesterday," she said, pulling up the social media profile on her computer. "Look at this." The post was a photo of Rebecca at dinner, alone, with the caption, "When your boyfriend cancels date night for the 3rd time this month because of work emergencies. Starting to feel like I'm dating his job instead of him." The comments were full of supportive friends telling her she deserved better, asking if everything was okay in her relationship, suggesting she needed to have a serious conversation with Dean. "She's starting to notice," Jamie observed, "and her friends are encouraging her to question what's going on." "Good," I said. "She deserves to know the truth." "Felix, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "What's your end game here? How far are you planning to take this?" I leaned back in my chair, considering the question. "I want them to lose everything they care about. Their jobs, their relationships, their reputations. I want them to understand what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you trust." Jamie nodded slowly. "And then what? Do you really want to stay with Naomi after all this?" It was a question I'd been avoiding, but the answer came immediately. "No. I just want to make sure she pays the price for what she's done before I walk away." "Okay then. What's the next move?" The next move came that afternoon, in the form of a carefully orchestrated public embarrassment. I'd discovered that Naomi and Dean frequented a upscale bar called the Metropolitan after work on Fridays. It was the kind of place where young professionals went to see and be seen, with exposed brick walls, craft cocktails, and a crowd that loved gossip. I arrived early, positioning myself at the bar with a clear view of their usual table. Jamie was with me, playing the role of supportive friend out for drinks. At 6:30, they walked in together, and I felt my chest tighten with familiar anger. They looked comfortable, intimate, like a real couple. Dean's hand rested on the small of Naomi's back as he guided her to their table. She leaned into him as they talked, laughing at his jokes, touching his arm. Watching them together, seeing the easy affection between them, hurt more than I'd expected. This wasn't just physical attraction or a momentary lapse in judgment. They genuinely cared about each other, which somehow made their betrayal even worse. "You okay?" Jamie asked quietly. "I'm fine," I said, though my knuckles were white around my whiskey glass. I waited until they were settled, until they'd ordered their drinks and fallen into their usual rhythm of conversation. Then I made my move. Walking over to their table, I put on my best surprised expression. "Naomi, what a coincidence running into you here." The color drained from her face. "Felix, what are you doing here?" "Just grabbing drinks with Jamie after work," I said, gesturing toward the bar where Jamie watched with barely concealed amusement. "And you must be the famous Dean Shaw." Dean stood up, extending his hand with the kind of confident smile that probably worked well in sales meetings. "Nice to finally meet you, Felix. Naomi talks about you all the time." I shook his hand, gripping it just a little too firmly. "Funny, she talks about you all the time, too." The tension at the table was palpable. Naomi looked like she might be sick, while Dean seemed to be calculating whether this was a friendly encounter or something more dangerous. "Well, don't let me interrupt your work meeting," I said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Though I have to say, this seems like a pretty romantic spot for discussing quarterly reports." Several people at surrounding tables glanced over, their conversations quieting as they sensed drama unfolding. "It's not a work meeting," Dean said, his smile faltering slightly. "We're just friends having drinks." "Of course you are," I said. "Just like you were just friends when you took her to that expensive restaurant on Newberry Street, and when you bought her that bracelet she's wearing, and when you've been texting her until midnight every night for the past 3 months. Now I had the attention of half the bar. Naomi was staring at me in horror, while Dean looked like he was trying to figure out how I knew so much about their relationship. "Felix, please," Naomi whispered. "Can we talk about this at home?" "Why?" I asked. "I thought you said there was nothing to hide, that you and Dean were just colleagues who happened to be really good friends." "We are," she insisted, but her voice was shaky. "Then you won't mind if I join you for a drink," I said, pulling out a chair. "I'd love to hear more about this big project you're working on together, the one that requires so many late-night strategy sessions." The silence stretched out uncomfortably. Around us, other patrons were openly staring now, sensing the kind of public relationship drama that would fuel their own conversations for weeks. Finally, Dean stood up. "I think I should go," he said. "This seems like something you two need to work out privately." "Running away?" I asked. "That's interesting. Usually when someone's just a friend, they stick around to help clear up any misunderstandings." Dean's jaw tightened. "I'm not running away from anything. I just don't think it's appropriate for me to be in the middle of your relationship issues." "Relationship issues," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling adultery now?" The word hung in the air like a bomb. Several people at nearby tables actually gasped, and I saw someone discreetly pulling out their phone to record what was clearly about to become a very public scene. Naomi stood up abruptly. "I'm leaving," she announced. "Felix, I'll talk to you at home when you're being rational." "Oh, I'm being perfectly rational," I said. "I'm just tired of pretending I don't know what's been going on." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, with Dean following close behind. But I wasn't done yet. "Tell Rebecca I said hello," I called after Dean, loud enough for the entire bar to hear. He stopped in his tracks, turning back with a look of pure shock. "What did you say?" "Rebecca Crawford, your girlfriend of 3 years. the pediatric nurse who volunteers at animal shelters and posts adorable photos of you two together on social media. I assume you've told her about your close friendship with Naomi? The bar had gone completely silent now. Even the bartender had stopped what he was doing to watch the confrontation unfold. Dean's face went through several different expressions: surprise, anger, fear, and finally resignation. He looked like a man who'd just realized his entire world was about to collapse. "You're insane," he said finally. "No," I replied calmly. "I'm thorough. It's what I do for a living." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving behind a bar full of fascinated witnesses and what was undoubtedly going to become the most talked-about drama in their social circle. I returned to my seat next to Jamie, who was staring at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. "That was intense," she said. "That was just the opening act," I replied, finishing my whiskey. "Wait until you see what I have planned for the finale." The weekend was a war zone. Naomi barely spoke to me, communicating mostly through angry glares and passive-aggressive comments. She spent most of Saturday on her phone, having hushed conversations with what I assumed were her friends, trying to control the narrative about Friday night's public confrontation. But the damage was already spreading beyond her ability to contain it. By Sunday morning, Jamie had compiled a comprehensive report on the social media fallout from our bar encounter. Multiple people had posted about witnessing the drama, and the story was spreading through their professional network like wildfire. "Look at this," Jamie said, showing me her laptop screen during our Sunday morning coffee meeting. "Someone posted a video of the whole thing on TikTok. It's got over 50,000 views already." I watched myself confronting Dean and Naomi, saw the shock on their faces when I mentioned Rebecca, observed the fascinated expressions of the other bar patrons. In the harsh light of social media, their guilt was even more obvious. "The comments are brutal," Jamie continued, scrolling through the responses. "People are calling them out for cheating, speculating about their workplace relationship, even trying to identify where they work so they can report them to HR. What about Rebecca? That's the really interesting part. Someone tagged her in the video and she's been asking questions. Look at her latest Facebook post." Rebecca's post was heartbreaking in its vulnerability. "Can someone please explain to me what's going on? People keep sending me videos and messages about Dean, but he won't return my calls. I'm scared and confused and don't know what to believe." The comments were full of people gently suggesting she deserved better, offering support, and sharing their own stories of infidelity. A few people had even posted screenshots of Dean and Naomi together at various events. "She's going to figure it out soon," Jamie observed. "Good," I said. "She deserves to know the truth." Monday morning brought new developments. Naomi left early for work, claiming she needed to handle some things at the office. I suspected she was trying to get ahead of the gossip and salvage her professional reputation, but I wasn't done applying pressure. Around noon, I received a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Dean." I stared at the message for several minutes, considering my response. Finally, I typed back, "The Metropolitan, 6 p.m. Come alone." His reply was immediate. "Fine." I spent the afternoon preparing for what I expected to be either an attempt at negotiation or a threat. Dean struck me as the type of man who was used to getting his way through charm or intimidation, and he'd probably exhausted his charm options. I arrived at the Metropolitan early, choosing a table in the back where we could talk privately. The bar was less crowded on Monday evening, but I noticed several patrons recognizing me from the weekend's viral video. A few even nodded approvingly, as if I'd provided them with quality entertainment. Dean arrived exactly on time, looking haggard and angry. His usually perfect appearance was disheveled, wrinkled shirt, messy hair, dark circles under his eyes. He sat down across from me without ordering a drink. "You've destroyed my life," he said without preamble. "I've exposed your life," I corrected. "There's a difference." "Rebecca broke up with me." My boss called me into his office this morning to discuss my conduct issues. Half my friends won't return my calls. His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. All because you couldn't handle your girlfriend preferring someone else. I leaned back in my chair, studying his face. Is that really what you think this is about? Jealousy? Isn't it? No, Dean. This is about consequences. You and Naomi thought you could lie, cheat, and manipulate people without paying any price. You thought you were smarter than everyone else, that you could manage the situation and control the outcome. I signaled the bartender for a whiskey. You were wrong. What do you want? He asked. Money? An apology? For me to disappear? I want you to understand something, I said, leaning forward. I'm a forensic accountant. I investigate fraud for a living. I'm very good at finding hidden assets, uncovering deception, and building airtight cases that destroy people's careers and reputations. His face went pale. When you decided to have an affair with my girlfriend, you made me your enemy, and I'm very good at being an enemy. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality to you. You've spent months lying to Rebecca, lying to your co-workers, lying to me through Naomi. You've built your entire life on deception, and now it's collapsing. That's not a threat. That's just cause and effect. Dean sat in silence for a long moment, his hands clenched into fists on the table. What if I end things with Naomi? What if I try to make things right with Rebecca? Too late for that, I said. Rebecca deserves better than someone who only comes crawling back after getting caught. And as for Naomi, I smiled coldly. Well, you'll have to ask her if she's still interested in a relationship with someone whose life is falling apart. You're enjoying this? More than I probably should, I admitted. But then again, you enjoyed months of sneaking around behind my back, laughing at how stupid and trusting I was. Turnabout is fair play. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This isn't over. Yes, it is, I said calmly. You just don't realize it yet. After he left, I sat alone at the table, sipping my whiskey and thinking about the next phase of my plan. Dean was broken, his relationship and reputation in ruins. But Naomi was still fighting, still trying to salvage something from the wreckage. It was time to finish what I'd started. That night, Naomi was waiting for me when I got home. She sat on our couch in her pajamas, her laptop open, surrounded by tissues and empty wine glasses. We need to talk, she said as I walked in. I'm listening. I know what you've been doing. The anonymous tips to HR, the social media campaign, the public humiliation at the bar. I know it's all been you. I hung up my coat and sat down across from her. Okay. That's it? Just okay? You've destroyed my career, ruined my reputation, ended my relationship with Dean, and all you have to say is, okay? What would you like me to say, Naomi? That I'm sorry? That I was wrong to expose your affair? I want you to explain why you couldn't just talk to me like an adult. Why you had to turn this into some elaborate revenge scheme. I stared at her, amazed by her ability to reframe herself as the victim. When exactly was I supposed to talk to you? Between your late-night phone calls with Dean? During one of your fake work emergencies? Or maybe while you were lying to my face about your lunch dates? I was trying to figure out how to tell you. You were trying to figure out how to manage me, I interrupted. I saw the messages, Naomi. I know you and Dean discussed me like I was some kind of problem to be solved. Her composure finally cracked. Fine. Yes, I was having an affair. Yes, I should have told you sooner. But what you've done is cruel and vindictive and completely disproportionate to what? To months of lies? To you making me doubt my own instincts? To you bringing him into our home in conversation every single night while you were sleeping with him? I never slept with him. The words hung in the air between us. I could see immediately that she regretted saying them, that she'd revealed more than she intended. Not yet, I said quietly. But you were planning to. She didn't deny it. Get out, I said. What? Get out of my apartment. Tonight. Take whatever you can carry and find somewhere else to stay. Felix, please. The lease is in my name. The furniture is mine. The life we built together was based on lies. I stood up, suddenly exhausted by the whole conversation. I want you gone in an hour. Where am I supposed to go? Call Dean, I suggested. Oh, wait, you can't, because his life is falling apart too. She stared at me with a mixture of hurt and hatred. I loved you. No, you didn't. You loved the stability I provided while you figured out if you wanted something better. The difference is, I actually loved you. Past tense. An hour later, I watched from our bedroom window as Naomi loaded suitcases into her car, her movements sharp with anger and frustration. She looked up at the window once, and I thought I saw tears on her face, but I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. My phone buzzed with a text from Jamie. How are you holding up? I typed back, it's almost over. But I was wrong. The real finale was still to come. 3 weeks passed in relative quiet. Naomi had moved in with her friend Claire temporarily, while I settled into the strange peace of living alone again. The apartment felt different without her presence, larger somehow, but also more honest. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that both Naomi and Dean were struggling with the aftermath of their exposure. Naomi had been placed on administrative leave pending the HR investigation, while Dean had been transferred to a different department with a significant reduction in responsibilities. Rebecca, meanwhile, had started dating a fellow nurse and seemed genuinely happy based on her social media posts. I was glad something good had come out of the whole mess. I thought the worst was behind us. I was wrong. On a Thursday evening in late March, I came home from work to find Naomi sitting on the front steps of our building. She looked terrible, thinner than before, dark circles under her eyes, her usually perfect appearance disheveled and tired. We need to talk, she said, standing as I approached. I think we've said everything we need to say. No, we haven't. Her voice was different, harder, more desperate. You've destroyed my life, Felix. Completely destroyed it. And I want to know why. I unlocked the front door. Because you destroyed mine first. That's not true, and you know it. What I did was wrong, but it wasn't malicious. I never set out to hurt you. Intent doesn't matter. Impact does. She followed me into the building, up the stairs to our former shared apartment. I didn't invite her in, but she pushed past me anyway, standing in the middle of our old living room like she still belonged there. I lost my job, she said. HR completed their investigation and terminated me for violating the company's ethics policy. Dean, too. I'm sorry to hear that. No, you're not. You're glad. This was exactly what you wanted. I set down my briefcase and looked at her. What I wanted was for you to be honest with me. What I got instead was months of lies and manipulation. Everything that happened after that was your choice. My choice? Her voice rose to nearly a shout. You systematically destroyed my reputation, my career, my relationship. How was any of that my choice? You chose to have an affair. You chose to lie about it. You chose to continue the deception even when you knew I was getting suspicious. I moved to the kitchen, needing distance from her anger. I just chose not to be a victim. You chose to be a monster. The word hit me harder than I expected. I turned to face her, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt a flicker of doubt about what I'd done. Maybe, I said quietly. But you made me one. I made a mistake, Felix. One mistake. And you've made me pay for it every single day since. One mistake? I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. Naomi, you had a months-long emotional affair. You lied to me repeatedly. You discussed our relationship with another man like I was some kind of obstacle to your happiness. That wasn't one mistake. That was a series of deliberate choices. And I was going to tell you, When? After you slept with him? After you figured out if he was worth leaving me for? After you had your exit strategy perfectly planned? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. You want to know why I did what I did? I continued. Because I loved you. Because I trusted you completely, and you used that trust to make a fool of me. Because you turned our relationship into a lie while I was planning a future with you. You were planning a future with me? I walked to my desk and pulled out the small velvet box I'd been hiding there for 2 months. Her eyes widened as she recognized what it was. I bought this the week before I found out about Dean, I said, setting the engagement ring on the coffee table between us. I was going to propose on your birthday. The silence stretched out between us. Naomi stared at the ring, her face cycling through a dozen different emotions. Felix, don't, I said. Just don't. We're past the point where words matter. She picked up the ring box, opening it to reveal the diamond I'd spent weeks choosing, the symbol of a future that no longer existed. When she looked up at me, there were tears in her eyes. I did love you, she said softly. I still do. But not enough. Not enough, she agreed. We stood there in the ruins of our relationship, surrounded by the artifacts of our shared life, photos on the walls, books on the shelves, furniture we'd chosen together. It felt like a museum of something that had died. What happens now? She asked. Now you leave. You rebuild your life somewhere else, with someone else. You learn to live with the consequences of your choices. And you? What do you do? I thought about it. I learned to live with the consequences of mine. She set the ring box back on the table and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she turned back one last time. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I lied, and I'm sorry I turned you into someone you don't want to be. I know, I said, but sorry doesn't fix anything. After she left, I sat alone in the apartment, staring at the engagement ring I'd never give to anyone. Outside, the city continued its normal rhythm. Traffic on the street, neighbors coming home from work, the ordinary sounds of lives being lived. I thought about what Naomi had said, about me becoming someone I didn't want to be. She wasn't wrong. The man who had systematically destroyed 2 people's lives wasn't someone I recognized, wasn't someone I was proud of being, but he was someone who had been necessary. I picked up my phone and called Jamie. How did it go? She asked. It's over, I said. Really over this time. How do you feel? I considered the question. Empty, satisfied, guilty, relieved, all at the same time. That sounds about right for something like this. Jamie, do you think I went too far? She was quiet for a long moment. I think you did what you felt you had to do. I think they hurt you badly, and you hurt them back worse. I think you're all going to have to live with the consequences. That's not really an answer. It's the only answer I have. After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment, thinking about choices and consequences, about love and betrayal, about the person I'd been and the person I'd become. Naomi was right about one thing. I had become a monster. But monsters, I'd learned, were sometimes necessary. Sometimes the only way to stop being a victim was to become something else entirely. I put the engagement ring away in my desk drawer, a reminder of the man I used to be and the future I'd once imagined. Then I poured myself a drink and sat down to plan what came next. Because this story wasn't really over. It was just beginning. 6 months later, I was a different person living a different life. I'd sold the brownstone apartment. Too many memories, too much history embedded in those exposed brick walls. My new place was a modern high-rise downtown, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. It was the kind of apartment I'd never shared with anyone, a space that belonged entirely to me. My forensic accounting business had grown significantly, partly due to referrals from satisfied clients, but also because of an unexpected reputation boost. Word had gotten around the professional community about my thoroughness in personal investigations, and I'd started getting calls from people who suspected their spouses or business partners of deception. I'd turned them all down. What I'd done to Naomi and Dean had been necessary for my own peace of mind, but I had no interest in becoming a professional destroyer of relationships. Jamie and I had expanded the firm, hired 2 new associates, and moved into a larger office space in the financial district. Success, it turned out, was the best revenge of all. On a crisp October afternoon, I was reviewing client files when Jamie knocked on my office door. "You have a visitor," she said, her expression unreadable. "I don't have any appointments scheduled." "I know, it's Rebecca Crawford." I looked up in surprise. "Dean's ex-girlfriend?" "Former ex-girlfriend, apparently. She's engaged to someone else now, says she wants to thank you." I considered turning her away, but curiosity won out. "Send her in." Rebecca Crawford was smaller than I'd expected from her social media photos, with kind eyes and a warm smile. She wore scrubs with cartoon characters on them, clearly coming from or going to her job at the children's hospital. "Mr. Harper," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you for seeing me. Please call me Felix. And I have to say, this is unexpected." She sat down across from my desk, folding her hands in her lap. "I wanted to thank you for what you did." "I'm not sure I understand." "6 months ago, you exposed Dean's affair with your girlfriend. In doing so, you saved me from wasting more years of my life with someone who didn't respect me or our relationship." I shifted uncomfortably in my chair. "I wasn't trying to save you. I was trying to hurt them." "I know," she said simply, "but the result was the same. You gave me the truth, even if that wasn't your intention." "How are you doing now?" Her face lit up with genuine happiness. "I'm engaged to a wonderful man named David. He's also a nurse, and he treats me the way I always deserved to be treated. We're getting married next spring." "Congratulations." "The thing is, I never would have met David if I'd still been with Dean. I would have kept making excuses for his behavior, believing his lies, accepting less than I deserved." She leaned forward slightly. "What you did was harsh, but it was also liberating." "What about Dean? Do you know what happened to him?" "He moved to California, got a job with a tech startup. From what I hear, he's doing well professionally. I hope he's learned something from what happened." "And Naomi?" Rebecca's expression grew more serious. "I actually ran into her a few weeks ago at a coffee shop downtown. She's working as a freelance event planner, building her business back up from scratch. She looked different. Older, maybe. More serious." "Did you talk to her?" "Briefly. She recognized me from social media, I think. She apologized for what had happened. Said she was sorry I got hurt in the crossfire." Rebecca paused. "She asked about you." "What did she want to know?" "How you were doing. Whether you'd moved on. She seemed genuinely concerned about you." I wasn't sure how to process that information. "What did you tell her?" "That it wasn't my place to share details about your life, but that you seemed to be doing well professionally." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Through my office windows, I could see the harbor, boats moving slowly across the water under the autumn sun. "Can I ask you something?" Rebecca said. "Of course." "Do you regret what you did?" It was a question I'd been asking myself for months. "Sometimes," I said honestly. "I regret becoming the kind of person who could systematically destroy 2 people's lives. But I don't regret making sure there were consequences for their actions." That's a very honest answer. I try to be honest now. I learned the hard way what happens when people aren't. Rebecca stood up, extending her hand again. "Thank you for your time, Felix. And thank you for giving me the chance at a better life, even if that wasn't what you intended." After she left, I sat alone in my office, thinking about unintended consequences and the strange ways that pain could lead to healing. My phone buzzed with a text from Jamie. "Dinner tonight? That new place in the North End?" I typed back, "Sure, 7 p.m.? Perfect. And Felix?" "Yeah? I'm proud of how you've rebuilt your life." I smiled, looking out at the harbor where the sun was beginning to set, painting the water gold and orange. For the first time in months, I felt something approaching peace. That evening, as Jamie and I walked through the narrow streets of the North End, past couples holding hands and families enjoying dinner together, I realized something important. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed by Naomi, but I also wasn't the man who had destroyed her life in response. I was someone new, someone who had learned hard lessons about love and trust and consequences. Someone who understood that sometimes you have to break completely before you can rebuild into something stronger. The numbers, as always, told the story. 2 people had betrayed my trust, and 2 people had paid the price. But in the process, 3 people, Rebecca, Naomi, and I, had been forced to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our relationships. The equation had balanced out, just not in the way any of us had expected. As we reached the restaurant, Jamie linked her arm through mine. "You know what I realized today?" "What's that?" "You're finally free, really free, from anger, from the need for revenge, from the past. You can be whoever you want to be now." She was right. For the first time in months, the future felt like a blank spreadsheet, waiting to be filled with new numbers, new possibilities, new chances to get the math right. I held the door open for Jamie, and we walked into the warm, bright restaurant together, leaving the ghosts of my old life behind on the darkening street. The numbers, finally, were adding up to something hopeful.